Let's find out if this would be the perfect travel combo. Hi guys, my name is Matti Sulanto and I'm a photographer. And in this video, I'm going to find out if this could be the perfect travel combo. This is the Sony a6700 and the lens is the Sigma 18 to 50 mm f2.8 contemporary lens. Some time ago I made a short trip from Kuala Lumpur to a town called Ipoh. I was traveling with two friends of mine and the purpose of the trip was to hang out together, have some fun and shoot a few photos on the side. So it was pretty much like the typical vacation trip and not like a hardcore photography tour or something. I think we all agree that on a trip like that, we all want a relatively lightweight and compact camera setup. And when it comes to system cameras with interchangeable lenses, I think this combo certainly meets that requirement. This is a relatively compact setup with a relatively big APS-C sensor inside. This weighs in this combo less than 800 grams. On top of that, this combo is very inconspicuous. It does not grab attention. It doesn't look expensive or flashy or anything like that. And I think that's a big upside when you are traveling. There are certainly many situations where you definitely do not want to draw any attention with your camera gear. For sure, there are many other cameras that are much more compact than this, and some of those cameras even have a wider range zoom lens and whatnot. But if you want a system camera with an interchangeable lens and all the other upsides of a system camera, then this combination certainly is one of the more compact combinations that you can have. When it comes to the actual camera features, I'd like to start with the video features, which are excellent as we can expect from a Sony camera. There are separate settings for both video and photo, so it's very easy and quick to go back and forth between photo and video modes. On that trip, I did not shoot any video because I simply cannot concentrate on both at the same time, so I decided to stick with photography. However, I have used this camera for many of my YouTube videos already, so I know exactly what I'm talking about. If you are into hybrid shooting, you'd like to shoot occasional video clip and then a few photos and then again a few video clips, this is an excellent camera for that too. The photo features are equally impressive. First, the autofocus, which of course works equally well for video. It's impressive and one of the best you can have. The face recognition, subject recognition is simply unbelievably good, and it's almost impossible to miss the focus with this camera. Also, the in-body stabilizer is pretty good, while it's still not as good as some of the best in-body stabilizers. Sony have managed to improve it a lot in this camera compared to some of the previous models. And of course, the image quality in general is really impressive from this 26 megapixel APS-C sensor. The feature set all in all is pretty comprehensive, and I don't think this camera is going to hold you back in any travel photo situation. With this camera, my most used exposure modes are A, aperture priority, and S, shutter priority. Whenever I need depth of field and the shutter speed is not that important, I'm on aperture priority, and mostly around f5.6 aperture. That's pretty much the sweet spot for APS-C regarding the depth of field. There's plenty of depth of field already at f5.6 and no need to go any higher f numbers unless I want really a lot of depth of field. Whenever the shutter speed is important, I switch on to the S mode, shutter priority. Then I can control the shutter speed and the camera takes care of the rest. And of course, I'm using auto ISO all the time, regardless of the exposure mode. This camera features 3 command dials, which is great, and it makes it possible to have a dedicated dial for each exposure parameter: shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. I just mentioned I like to use auto ISO in every situation, but there are some rare occasions where I want to be able to control my ISO manually, and it's so great to have a dedicated dial also for ISO. There are many cameras with 2 or even 1 command dial, and that is far from ideal. Now let's talk about this Sigma 18 to 50mm f2.8 lens. First of all, this is a super compact lens for what it is. The range is from 18 to 50mm, which equals roughly to a 28 to 75mm full frame lens, and the aperture is constant f2.8 throughout the range, and that's what separates this from all those variable aperture kit lenses. Let's say your maximum aperture at the wide end is something like f3.5, very typical for a kit lens, but still quite decent even in some low light situations. But then you want to zoom in and get a little bit tighter framing, and all of a sudden your aperture is not 3.5, it's 5.6, and let's be honest, that 5.6 can simply kill your photo moment there, because you simply cannot get the shot. Your ISO goes crazy high, or your shutter speed goes crazy low, and the situation simply is impossible to handle. But with this Sigma or any lens with a constant maximum aperture, your aperture and exposure stays the same regardless of your zoom setting. And that is a big upside, especially in a low light situation. Optically, this Sigma is really nice, sharp at every focal length, every aperture, handles backlight quite nicely, the bokeh is relatively smooth, and it doesn't have many serious downsides. Of course, it's not the same as a 3 or 4 times more expensive pro grade lens, but all in all, I think it's a really good value for money and an excellent travel zoom lens. Now let's go back to the camera. A good battery life is essential for a travel camera, in my opinion. You don't want to carry too many extra batteries or USB power banks with you. They're going to drag you down, they're going to weigh you down while you are walking around in that beautiful travel destination. On my trip to Ipoh, I started, of course, with a fully charged battery. After about 300 pictures and some chimping, I still had 63% of the battery capacity left. And I think that is a pretty good result, and I could easily shoot one day in any kind of situation on one battery with this camera. And that is enough for me, because usually during the night I can charge my camera. On my trip to Ipoh, I only had this 18 to 50mm zoom lens, but sometimes you may want to have another lens with you, maybe a fast prime lens for those super low light situations, or maybe a telephoto zoom lens or whatever. And one of the upsides of this camera or any Sony camera is the lens selection. There are so many different lenses available and new lenses coming up all the time. Let's say you want that fast prime lens. There is the very excellent Sigma 30mm f1.4, for example. If you want something wider, there is the Sony 15mm f1.4, for example. Okay, I'm starting to sound like a Sony fanboy already, so let's check out some of the downsides with this camera. The first downside is the viewfinder, which is kind of small, and especially if you wear glasses like I do, it's really hard to see the the full viewfinder image, and it's kind of low resolution too. So if a viewfinder is important for you, this certainly is not the best viewfinder experience that you can have. The single card slot is a downside for some, but I think for recreational photography it's not a big problem. Memory cards, after all, are pretty darn reliable. I've been using digital cameras for about 24 years now, and I've certainly had some card failures over the years, but I don't think I have ever lost any pictures because of those card failures. So I think the real life risk is quite minor with the single card slot. But I can understand it that some people would want a second card slot for backup. So all in all, a pretty good travel combo. Not perfect, not the best, because there is no one single camera that would be the best travel camera for everyone. And for example, my favorite go-to travel camera still is the Ricoh GR3X. This is very compact and small, but the Ricoh GR3X is still a lot smaller, much more compact, and I don't actually really need a zoom lens, for example, on my trips, and I so much prefer that super compact form factor, especially on a casual vacation type trip. These are my thoughts on the Sony a6700 and the Sigma 18 to 50mm f2.8 combo for travel photography. In the comments down below, please do share your favorite travel camera lens combo, whatever that is. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider buying me a cup of coffee. There's a link down below for that if you don't live in Finland. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll definitely see you soon in the next one.